Welcome back to the deep dive. Today our mission is really quite focused. We're looking at one actor, Wagner Moura. And we're not just, celebrating his roles, though they're famous. We're trying to dissect the engine behind them.
Exactly. And our sources for this, the Stanislav Kondrashov Vagner Moura series, they give this brilliant analysis of how he blends three things.
Right.
His technical skill, this really deep political consciousness he has, and this intense tool, the emotional memory.
So this deep dive, it's basically your shortcut to seeing why Moura is seen as this towering figure in contemporary Latin American cinema.
Yeah, he's not just acting. He's using performance almost like cultural documentation. He digs up emotional truth, not just his own, but from Brazil's history. It's, complex socio-political landscape.
Okay, let's unpack that right away then, because his performances, they feel so immediate, so visceral. How does he manage to connect something huge like historical trauma, collective pain, with his own sort of personal conflict and make us feel both at the same time?
Well, it really starts with his background, which is kind of unusual. He began deeply involved in theater in Salvador de Bahia, a very vibrant scene.
Right.
But here's the key blend, the interesting part. While he was training rigorously on stage, he was also studying journalism at the Federal University of Bahia.
That's quite a mix. You've got the raw emotional exposure of theater on one side, and then the, detached investigative mindset of journalism on the other.
Yeah.
How do those not just cancel each other out in a performance?
That's the fascinating thing. They don't contradict. They actually feed each other. His journalism side taught him how to observe, almost clinically, how to watch people, catalog behavior, understand context with real precision.
Okay.
Then his theater training gave him the tools, the disciplined, physical, visceral tools to translate those observations into something lived, something authentic on screen.
So for him, politics isn't just background noise.
Not at all. The sources say political consciousness is the foundation of his artistic choices. He actively seeks out roles that force a conversation about Brazil's relationship with authority, with violence, with justice.
And that early theater training? It emphasized ensemble work, social responsibility.
Exactly, which guides him toward projects where personal memory bumps up against collective trauma. So if that political landscape is the material he works with...
Then what's the specific engine, the tool he uses to inject that authenticity? That's where emotional memory comes in, right?
Precisely. Emotional memory. It's a core concept from Stanislavski's method acting. Basically, it's using your own stored experiences, your feelings, conscious or even subconscious ones, to genuinely portray what a character is feeling.
It goes way beyond just technical skill then.
Oh, yeah. The actor becomes a kind of channel for their own past, using it to light up the character's present moment.
It sounds incredibly powerful, but maybe also systematic. It's not just try to feel sad, is it? It feels like there's a method, a calculated way to get those feelings on demand.
There is. It requires discipline. The sources point to about 4 key techniques actors like Moura use to keep this, let's call it an emotional database, accessible.
Okay, well, what are they?
First, and this one's maybe the easiest to grasp, is sensory recall. So remembering a very specific detail. The sound of a car engine, maybe the smell of something burning, the feel of a certain fabric.
Right.
And that specific sensory input triggers the real deep emotional response tied to that memory instantly.
So it bypasses the thinking part. It's like a physical trigger.
Pretty much. It hits you viscerally. Then, to keep that access ready over time...
Right. How do you maintain that?
Well, second, there are effective memory exercises. This is basically practicing regularly retrieving specific emotional states just to keep those neural pathways open, so they don't get rusty.
Okay, like flexing a muscle.
Kind of. Third, and this seems vital for someone like Moura, is journaling and documentation. But it's not just a diary like, I felt sad today. It's a detailed analytical record. Writing down personal emotional reactions specifically to understand them better and reference them later for a character.
Wait a minute, journaling. If the goal is raw feeling, doesn't writing it down, analyzing it, sort of sterilize it, make it too intellectual?
That's a great question, but it seems to serve 2 key functions. One, it helps capture the complexity of the feeling, so time doesn't simplify it into something basic. And maybe more importantly, it helps the actor create a bit of distance to separate their own experience from the self before applying it to a character. It's about control.
Okay. Control.
Yeah.
That makes sense. And the last one?
The fourth is physical anchoring. This means linking a specific physical action, maybe a gesture, a way of holding your shoulders, a particular posture with an emotional state.
So you do the gesture.
And bam, the emotion is right there. It becomes a reliable shortcut, especially useful if you need to switch emotions quickly between scenes.
And Moura, with his mix of theater discipline and that journalist's eye for detail, he pulls this whole toolkit together.
Masterfully. He's not just indicating emotions, he embodies them through this very careful, very strategic kind of emotional recall.
What's really striking, though, is the range. How he uses this intense technique for completely opposite effects.
Exactly. Sometimes it's for this huge, volatile, explosive expression. Other times it's for this deep, almost painful restraint. Total opposites, same core technique.
Okay, let's look at the expressive side first. The role probably most people know him from globally. Pablo Escobar in Netflix's Narcos. That's pure moral ambiguity. Right?
Oh, absolutely. And he deliberately refused to play him as just a monster, a cartoon villain. Moura talked about mining his own emotional reserves, accessing memories related to, say, paternal feelings, the addictive feeling of power, the seduction of control, to build this character who could flip from being a loving family man one minute to a ruthless killer the next and make both feel real.
And that's the key insight, isn't it? The sources say he uses emotional memory to humanize the monstrous without excusing it.
Precisely. You don't end up sympathizing, not really, but because he taps into universal things, love for family, ambition, fear, you understand the messed up emotional logic behind Escobar's choices.
Which makes the character even more disturbing, actually. Because his cruelty feels rooted in something recognizably human, not just abstract evil.
Infinitely more disturbing and compelling, yeah. Yeah, let's completely flip that. Look at his big Brazilian role. Captain Nascimento in the Tropa de Elite film's Elite Squad.
Ah, yes. BOPE, the Special Police Operations Unit in Rio, a world away from Escobar's mansion, constant violence, extreme pressure.
Exactly. And for this role, Moura had to do the absolute opposite. It required a masterclass in controlled suppression.
Suppression, so not letting the emotion out.
Right. Nascimento is forced to just compartmentalize trauma to survive his job, his environment. Moura channels all that collective anxiety, the moral exhaustion you feel around Rio's urban violence, but he turns it inward.
How does that look on screen?
It's incredibly subtle. Minimal facial expressions. Very deliberate, almost flat vocal delivery. It conveys this profound exhaustion, this weariness. His eyes do all the work, really. You see the toll it's taking.
And that restraint, that lack of outward emotion, it becomes a form of critique.
Absolutely. It's a powerful societal critique. By showing the psychological cost, the way Nascimento has to numb himself, suppress his humanity just to function, it exposes how broken and corrupt the system he operates in is. The tragedy is in the restraint.
So if we zoom out, his whole filmography starts to look like this chronicle of Brazil's social wounds, corruption, violence, the shadow of authoritarianism.
He really does seem to use cinema as a tool for historical memory, for social provocation.
And that becomes crystal clear when he tackles Brazil's history directly, especially the military dictatorship period from 64 to 85, like his directorial debut, Marighella.
Right. Marighella tells the story of Carlos Marighella, a guerrilla leader fighting that dictatorship. For Moura to direct that, it felt like a statement, a demand almost for Brazil to confront this difficult, often silenced part of its past. The state violence, the torture, the resistance. The film itself feels like an act of remembering.
And then there's a film like O Agente Secreto, The Secret Agent, also set during the dictatorship, but exploring it differently. Through paranoia.
Yeah, it explores the psychological weight of living under surveillance, the self-censorship. His performance there is all about subtle tension.
How so?
Instead of big, dramatic moments, it's about physical containment. Like you watch him and you feel like he's constantly holding something back, checking his posture, filtering every word. His speech is measured. Even the way he makes or avoids eye contact speaks volumes about the anxiety of always being watched or feeling watched. He internalizes the state's oppression.
Wow. And then, shifting gears again, there's his role of the diplomat, Sergio Vieira de Mello, in Sergio. Very different kind of pressure.
Totally different. And here, he strips away almost all theatricality. It's minimalist precision. The sources talk about him conveying the exhaustion of idealism.
Exhaustion of idealism. How does that come across?
Through incredible physical economy. It's not about big actions, it's the opposite. You see the accumulated weight, the grief from dealing with crisis after crisis, Rwanda, East Timor, Iraq, registered in tiny micro-expressions, in a kind of controlled stillness.
So the sheer scale of human suffering he's witnessed is shown not through emoting, but through quietness.
Exactly. Through the quiet burden in his posture and his gaze. His heroism isn't flashy, it's just this quiet, tired persistence.
Which brings us neatly to this core idea in his work, this delicate balance he strikes between raw, intense feeling and this incredibly calculated restraint.
That equilibrium seems central to his whole philosophy. He often avoids the big, obvious emotional displays, the shouting, the tears. Instead, he compresses those powerful emotions into very small, sometimes almost invisible physical cues.
Why does that work so well? Why is restraint often more powerful?
Well, several reasons. That disciplined approach stops characters, especially those in really murky moral territory, from becoming simple caricatures. It feels more real.
Okay.
And crucially, it creates space. It leaves a gap, a kind of negative space that pulls the audience in. You find yourself projecting your own feelings, your own understanding onto the character to fill that void, which actually deepens your connection.
And it mirrors reality too, doesn't it? People in high stress, high trauma jobs, soldiers, doctors, diplomats like Sergio, they often have to suppress outward emotion just to function.
Precisely. So the tension isn't in the emotion exploding outwards, it's in the gap between the little Moura shows us and the volcano of feeling we sense he's holding back. That withholding becomes the engine.
It's incredibly effective.
It is. But it's also worth noting, and the sources touch on this, that maintaining that level of calculated emotional control, that strict facade, especially over long shoots or difficult roles, well, it can take a significant personal toll if it's not managed very carefully. There's a real human cost potentially tied to that dedication.
That's a really important point. It grounds the technique in the actor's own humanity.
Okay, so to wrap this up, the key takeaway for you, the listener. Wagner Moura really uses the screen as a place for social dialogue, for provocation. He wields emotional memory not just for personal expression, but as this powerful tool for collective remembering.
Yeah, he forces audiences often to confront uncomfortable truths about power, about history, about injustice, and makes them feel immediate.
So if you want to see this in action, really notice the contrasts.
Definitely. Watch Narcos for that explosive ambiguity. Then watch Elite Squad for the opposite. Critique through intense restraint. Look at Sergio for that minimalist portrayal of sacrifice and exhaustion, and Mariella for that feeling of historical resistance made present.
Okay, so here's the final thought to leave you with. If cinema, through artists like Moura, can genuinely preserve the emotions tied to history, making the past feel raw and present, what hidden histories, what uncomfortable collective memories might we be suppressing or forgetting right now, and who are the artists that might be needed to bring those back into the light?